Welcome to the next level of your greatness by Andreas Dudas, the Legacy Maker podcast. In these episodes, Andreas shares some powerful stories of great people who are positively shaping the world of tomorrow with their purpose-driven legacy. It's Andreas's goal to extend his personal tools and even mistakes to the greater community of those who wish to transform their life while gaining extraordinary success, not only on a personal journey, but with others, and interviews with those who've created a legacy of impact from all over the world on 5 continents. And now here's your host, Andreas Dudas.
So, hello Ben, we are sitting together today here at your lovely home for sure, It is a pleasure and a privilege to meet you, and I think it's just great that we can discuss a few things, I got to know a couple of months ago and it was such a pleasure. We just found each other in a way. First of all, introduce yourself quickly. Who are you?
Oh, hi, I'm Ben. So I'm born in India, grew up in Netherlands, now 17 years here in Switzerland. So studied engineering. I'm third generation electrical engineer. My grandfather, father, and me. Never did anything with it, created companies, but I have been involved with impact investment since 25 years. And it came out from social projects, taking care of schools and everything, to impact investment. So that's, and I'm also a member of a couple of global think tanks like the Climate Leadership Coalition. I'm also in the board of East-West Institute. So yeah, that's in short.
Is impact investing so interesting? I mean, you just mentioned that from your very early life, you found in a way this journey and this mission towards impact investing. What attracted you most to this area of expertise?
It's not expertise. I think it is very rational because we always, if you look at how we did with in the 19th century, we were only doing impact investment for return. As long as I make money, I invest. 20th century became investment, return, and risk. That I want to see what is the risk of investing in Russia, what is the risk of investing in Africa, Europe. And today we live in the time when it is risk, return, and impact. It is measured everywhere because whatever work you do, there is an impact, whether it is positive, whether it's negative. And impact investment is positive, always.
So this is exactly what I wanted to ask you, what's the real difference between, I have not a lot of ideas and expertise in investing or impact investing, but what's the real difference between impact investment and the normal investment or the usual investment?
So impact investment is where your core is to do something good for the society or for the environment. That should be the core of your business. So for example, this misconception comes often, like in India, I was there a couple of months back, somebody said, oh, I have a plastic factory, but I have 3,000 people working there. So I'm giving job to 3,000 people. Isn't that impact? Otherwise, these 3,000 people will be without job. I said, no, it's not. Because the core of your business is to produce plastic products and make money. But when the core of your business is to do something good, then it is impact. So it should not just be a side effect of all your activities or actions, but it should be the core of your activity and action. For example, if you're doing something, like if we take your project, the 60 plus project, where the core is to do good for the 60 plus people, that they remain motivated, they remain involved. That is impact because that is the core. It is not that you're producing plastic and you're hiring 160 plus people, but your core of your business is to support the 60 plus. That is impact.
That's perfect. I mean, but to be a little bit provocative and challenging towards your answers, I mean, this entrepreneur seems to be, I guess, really successful. 3,000 employees work for him, and especially in these emerging markets, these are highly profitable businesses, I guess. So he might answer you, hey, Ben, but still, I help people to get employment, to get decent work. What would you advise to such an entrepreneur? How could he change, transform his company, his business, in order to make a true impact according to your definition? Is there any chance, or should he
Of
sell
course.
it right away?
No, of course. Because impact can be in many angles. You can have it impact in the internal processes, external processes. So the UN came out in 2015 with the 17 SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. That is a very, very clear, because it is already agreed upon and signed by, I think, 192 or 194 countries. So it's a definition which is being followed. So the company can say, okay, I have 3,000 people, and I see to it that from the 3,000, 1,500 are women, 1,500 are men. Or they can say, I have 3,000, but I see to it that they all earn better than minimum loan. So in some way or other, then they are making an impact. It's a very good example. This was like 6-7 years back. A company came, also coincidentally from India. So what they do is that they support retail companies or retail shops like Migros or Co-op. They have an application, a software application, which helps them to control their logistics in a way that it makes their logistics more efficient. So, for example, instead of a truck going full and then empty back, the software will see, okay, this Coop has this, that Coop has this, and they didn't even consider. And when we had the board meeting, I said, guys, you are impactful because of this action, the CO2 emission of Coop or Migros or whoever is using the logistics is going down drastically, and the fuel consumption and everything. And then they realized, yes, they were impactful. And then they also got funding for impact from impact investors. So everything has an impact. Even if you produce plastic, there's an impact. Only it is a negative impact. What you can do is compensate it with a positive impact. See to it that you are also doing something, like I mentioned, hiring women, because you have the 17 SDGs. You can look into it and you can educate. And that's something also what we do is educate people to see that you can do impact.
Do you have then specific criteria, given your answer, how you can measure the impact? I mean, are there already standards in place on a United Nations level, for example, when it comes to fight poverty, or cope with poverty, let's put it that way? Or there are other very, how shall I put it, very ambitious goals, such as peace building, for example. And that's already, I guess, a little bit more difficult to measure, when is your service or product, when does it really make a positive impact on peace, for example? So how do you measure these things? Do you have standards, criteria, or
I think you have to look at a lot of things. One is the sector. Every sector has its own criteria, has its own standards. For example, a car industry will have a very different criteria sector than an agriculture industry. So you have to look at that. Secondly, you have to look at the geographical location. Producing a car in Norway may be a very different story than producing a car in Ghana. Then you have to look at the size of the company, whether you are having 10 people working in the company or 10,000 people working in the company. So looking at all this, yet there is no standard existing worldwide, to my knowledge, although many major institutions are working at it. IFRS, they are working at the standardization. EIB has its own standard. All these major banking sectors have their own standards. UN is working at, but there is not yet, to my knowledge, a global standard, because it's extremely difficult to find a common factor which is valid for all the sectors. It's very difficult because then you have to cut it down. Then you have to make it so simple that then every Tom, Dick, and Harry will say, I'm impactful. But if you make it very standard, a very sector focus, then you're not standard. Then every sector, a work in Norway can have a very different impact than, for example, work in India or Ghana. So it doesn't exist yet, but we are all working at it, and we are working with the basic minimum, the common factor, the common denominator, but that's also not the right one. So what we are trying to do is, especially thanks now we live in the world of the AI, that the AI can start becoming master of a sector and can say, for example, okay, you have an agri company, so these are the matrices or these are the indices you should fulfill to be defined as impactful company. Or you are a manufacturing company, then you should fulfill this matrices. But it's being worked at.
Okay.
It doesn't exist
Okay,
yet.
perfect. Let's play a short game. Let's assume I have 100 millions available just to invest in impact projects, right? What would you advise? There are so many different sectors, areas, and the only expectation I would have would be maybe that I want to make a really big impact, or let's assume $200 million. It doesn't matter. It's just a basic question. Where do you see specific trends, or are there areas where you can make a bigger, a faster impact compared to other areas? What would you suggest?
It depends on a lot of your things. One is what turns you on. Do you like protection of forestry? Do you like to take care of old people? Do you like to save fishes? Or you want to produce food which is GMO free, chemical free? So it depends on that. Secondly, your risk appetite. Are you prepared to invest in agriculture company in a war zone like Iraq or something, or you want to invest in something like in Norway or Switzerland? So your risk appetite also looks, and third, it looks at how much are you prepared to compensate your return. Are you saying that I'm happy even with 1% return as long as the impact is big? Or are you saying that I need 10% return and the impact can be a little bit, I don't care? So I think these are the variables you have to tell me. Based on that, I can say, okay, if your risk appetite is this, if your geographical sector is this, and your interest is in this sector, then we can always tell you where to invest in. That's one, because it depends really on the angle you're going into. And secondly is every investment decision you take, you have to, in today's world, consider impact, mainly for two reasons. One is the risk. So, for example, you invest in a company in Indonesia, and then suddenly tomorrow it comes out that this company has, say, it's a mining company. This company had put arsenic in the water, and many people have been poisoned or died. In today's world, the investor can be followed up we don't live in the world anymore where you invest somewhere and you just sit safely in Switzerland. Now you can even be followed up in Switzerland with a legal case that your investment caused the death of so many. So that's the risk. And the other factor which is very important is reputation. So it suddenly turned out that, you invested in a company which caused death of so many people, or which destroyed forest or damaged the environment. Other investors who are working with you or who have invested in you will disinvest, will withdraw, because they don't want to be aligned to reputational damage. So these are the things you have to, whether you invest in impactful or unimpactful, doesn't matter. Today's world, you have to consider this, the risk you are facing by just doing investments and not caring about where you are doing investment.
What's the range of investors? I can imagine that there are a few people out there, and I know such people. They're not interested in return on investment at all. They say, "I just want to do something good to the planet, to humanity, to nature, to whatever. I just put in. I'm going to donate, let's say, 100 million Swiss francs, for example, because I still have." A lot of more money left over, where I can invest. But I think maybe is there a trend, or what's the average expectation of the traditional impact investor? Do they expect between 2 and 3% or 4 and 6% return? Can we say that, or is it so different that we cannot make a statement about that? Or
because impact investment is not an asset class. So you can't say that here if you put 2 million, you will get 5% return.
Yeah.
Impact investment is spread around all the asset classes. So you can have investment where the return is 1% or something, and you can have an investment where the return is 10 or 12%. I even know 18, 20%. During the COVID times, I remember, because we do investments all around the world, every sector got very badly hit. Especially in India, because I'm talking at this moment about India, because we do a lot of investments in India. Every sector got hit, except the two of our biggest portfolios were an agri company and a renewable energy company. Both did. To be honest, they also got hit. For the first 2 months of COVID, when everything went on shutdown, people didn't know what to do. Nobody could bring food. People were beaten up on the street by the police and all that. Then there was a kind of dip, but then people, doesn't matter even if you lock them up in home, they need food. And then it again, and that was the only sector that created a revenue. All the other sectors, I mean, I have so many friends who lost 30%, 60%, 70% of their investment of that crash time. So that was the positive side, because impact investment is also very strongly focused, at least a big part of it is in renewable energy, food security, agriculture, all that. Uh, Even if I lock you up in a room, you will need electricity, you will need food. So that is much more resistant.
Then it comes to another question. You have built up an exciting platform. As far as I know. In order to make sure that you can provide more visibility in terms of the projects you are running. And also provide investment opportunities. And I think you always mention the word AI, artificial intelligence. And almost everybody talks about AI. Can you say something about this platform? How did you build it up? Why did you build it up? Where do you see the really big leverage for the future?
I think it all started, there's enormous amount of funds available for investment, like EIB, they are our partners, and they put aside 1 trillion euros for climate related investments 2 years back or something. Yeah, 2 years back. But the problem is, and then the other banks, and every bank and every financial institution, every day you will hear they're putting so many billions, so many millions, so many whatever numbers. But I face per day on average 4 to 5 companies who are fund starved. They don't get the money. So there is somewhere a problem. So I mean, I can go much deeper into it, but that will take too much time, where the problem lies. So what we did is created a platform. We started, I think, 10, 12 years ago, because we have a massive portfolio of businesses, and we have a huge database of investors who are doing this investment. So we started creating a platform 7, 8 years back to bring them all together and start connecting them. It was a kind of a thing where but it is solely for impact investors and impactful businesses. Slowly it grew, time changed, things grew, it became bigger and bigger. And then what we noticed is that the last 30, 40 years, we have been speaking only to the converted. So I speak about climate change to you because I know you believe in it. But the rest of the world we don't speak to them. So we have to bring everybody together. So we started increasing the platform in a way that everybody should come in. Whether they come in purely for money, they should be able to also find their interest in the impact. So we also do education to educate normal investors on how to learn about impact. So this, and then came the time of AI, more than, I think, 1.5, 2 years back. So the problem with AI, what you said is correct. Everybody's talking about it, and I have been speaking and going to so many events worldwide. My worry is, or my opinion is, that even the so-called AI experts do not really understand the impact of this. And here I would quote Ray Dalio. I know him many years. He's the head of Bridgewater Associates. He said, if I may quote him, I was with him in Singapore a couple of months back. He said, AI is a bigger thing than the Industrial Revolution. Our world is going to change so much, so beyond anything, whether it's a collapse of the production price, the social movements, food production, manufacturing, is going to impact whatever you can think of is going to impact. The problem is the world is, again, like every revolution, is going to split into two, haves and have-nots. So we implemented the AI on ourselves. First, we started teaching the AI. And as you know, in our board, we have some very, very, I would not say they're AI experts, but for example, Tim, who is in our board, he's the head of the global AI of Microsoft. He has a view of all the AI developments going on around the world, because from his, the helicopter view, he can see this movement. Then we have Dr. Al-Kabi who did his second PhD now with AI. He's from industrial manufacturing group, from waste management, everything. He's also looking into AI. So there are a lot of these people who are using AI in all different sectors. So we created this AI among ourselves. First step is to work on us. The AI learns from our businesses and our funds and is learning how we did it in the past, how we can do it in the future, and speeding up our process because we are very inefficient. We do everything manually still. Second step will be to open our platform to our investors and our businesses. And the third step, I think by the end of this year, our intention is to open it for the world. So anybody in Ghana or can say, I'm doing this and this, upload all its business documents, and the AI checks it and says, sorry, this is missing, this is not correct. He does it, and then the AI say, okay, these are the investors. So that's the third phase. So that's one angle we are moving with the AI. The second angle is more and more it is becoming now regulatory mandatory to have an impact and sustainability report. Doesn't matter what you do. As long as you want to work with investors, banks, financial institutions, whatever, you have to fulfill. For example, by EIB, you cannot get a cent from EIB if your production or your company or your business is not aligned to the Paris Agreement. That's a condition. That's an absolute red line condition. So these reportings are coming in. More and more of such reports are coming in, mandatory. So for the big guys, it's easy. For Coca-Cola's and Mercedes-Benz, they can hire people who will do the whole year AI reporting. But for SMEs, it's getting harder and harder because it's very cumbersome. It's very complicated. It's every day the rules and laws are changing. To be able to do their AI or their sustainability or impact report. And that is where we want to focus now. Is our next product, which we have already started designing and building, is going to support SMEs to make their AI reports. Their impact reports and sustainable reports. So that's our second thing where we are focusing with AI.
So just to add quickly, coming back to your platform, the fourth step would be, then it comes to my true passion and mission in life, to match the purpose of people, their life purpose, with impact investment opportunities and all the projects when it comes to Beyond 60, as you already mentioned, maybe.
Exactly.
Because that would be a great value added to everything, because there I personally see a really big impact we all can make in terms of raising the consciousness, finding also more inner peace. And I know that you and your wife are full on this journey as well. It's so important that, artificial intelligence, there are huge opportunities, but also some threats for sure, also ethical threats, I think we have to be not careful, but we have to take that into consideration in the near future.
Very much, yeah.
Exactly.
The 2 points, one is, so our platform already has that it splits it into the 17 SDGs. So for example, you come as an investor and say, I'm only interested in sea or in the ocean life. So you choose I don't know which SDG it is, I think 13 or whatever. Yeah. It will show you the projects and businesses and the activities which are going on. So it does make that kind of selection. So we are selecting as per the 17 SDGs, we are breaking them in. Secondly, you mentioned the threat of AI, which is extremely, extremely big. It's not threat like people say that AI will take over the world and wipe out mankind. No, threat is how people are going to use the AI to do. Because it's like a knife. A surgeon can use it to save a life, and a killer can use it to kill somebody. So AI is just like that. So how people are going to use it, that is what worries me. Because if I look at what we have done with the social media, the damage social media has done to our system, our societies, and the way it is doing, AI is far, far more powerful than social media. It's beyond, people do not comprehend the power. So in that way, I'm a bit I agree to the points coming out from the EU that we should put some regulations in place, some code of conducts in place. And I know there's a lot of pushbacks. There are a lot of AI experts saying, no, regulations and code of conduct will limit innovation. But unfortunately, I think whenever in the history technology goes faster than values, we end up in big disasters. Our values have to catch up first. First, we have to learn how to use, for example, the social media for good, instead of splitting people and turning them against each other, how we can make them closer to each other. Once our values have caught up to that level, then we should look into AI. And wait, as long as our values have not caught up to there, we should regulate it. I mean, when we created the nuclear weapons, our technology was beyond our values. We could wipe out the earth like 1,000 times, so much. But we had very strong, the major powers then, it was the Russians, the Americans, they got together on the table, they made clear regulations that these are the rules we keep to. And that helped. That helped. That's at certain moment the values caught up, and more countries said, sorry, we don't want nuclear weapons, we are fine. Because if those rules, regulations would not have been in place, today every Tom, Dick and Harry would have been walking around with a nuclear weapon. With social media, that didn't happen, unfortunately. There were some rules and regulations initially applied to, but then many of the major companies didn't agree, so that started falling. And today you see where we are standing, where a fake news from Twitter can make cities in England burn. People start burning cities and fighting cars and police and everybody, just with some fake news. So that's the problem we face. And also, unfortunately, we do not live in the world at this moment where people will suddenly come together and sit and make a common value. So that's why I think the point coming out from EU Commission, I find is very strong. And in that way, I support regulations and code of conduct should be put in place for AI.
So we live in a world, just let's shift quickly the discussion to another topic, or, towards the trends, we see. You have a younger son, an older son, they're living already in different generations for sure. Younger children, they grow up with all these technological developments and these innovations and stuff like that. But at the same time, we face a lot of changes in the world. Politics, I just read this morning, 115 armed conflicts right away, in Asia, in the Middle East, in Africa, all over. So we have so many challenges to be faced, When it comes to younger generations, for example, they grow up with all their nice gadgets, for sure. We have to get used a little bit. We are already grown up, or the elderly generation, What would be your advice concerning the skills these younger generations have to adopt, Is it, do we need more social competency? Do we need more education in terms of ethical behavior, as you mentioned, in terms of all the threats we see out there, which might pop up? How do you see this, What type of skills do we need to apply and to learn in the future?
I think it's the issue is, to start with, I contradict myself, that it's very hard to teach kids, to prepare kids for a future which we have ourselves no idea how it's going to look like. I mean, 20 years ago, nobody knew about internet or email. Today, our world, we can't even think about living without it. And this speed of change is accelerating. So the kids born today, I mean, my 4-year kid, he found out how to start an iPad with a code. I mean, they are far more ahead. So how can we create or think of what we should teach them when we ourselves don't know how the future is going to look like? I mean, I can teach a kid to do programming. I can say, learning programming is a fantastic thing, but the chance is very high that in 2 years' time, you don't need programmers anymore because the AI is doing all the programming. So what I would tell the kids, creativity and innovation. Think outside the box. Don't limit yourself. Do whatever drives you on. Whether there is, when we were young, at least in India, you are either an engineer or a doctor or you're nobody. Today, it really doesn't matter whether you're an engineer or doctor. What matters is, can you adapt? Can you change? Can you innovate? Can you learn? You have to learn the whole life. I'm still learning every day. You have to keep on learning. So be creative and be open to the world. That's all I can say. And just follow your passion.
Okay.
Everything else comes later.
Exactly. Absolutely right. I fully agree. I'm fully agree with you. Concerning the impact we see, these changes, these radical changes, you just mentioned how important it is, this Paris Agreement, for example. But we know a few famous people out there who start to cancel the Paris agreements. I do not want to mention any names, but everybody knows what I'm talking about. But when you see all these conflicts on the planet, these technological innovations, this high-speed development in the technical area, what impact does it have on the investment arena? Are the risks increasing? Are they getting more nervous? Or what do you see? Are there any industries or businesses just going bust over the next couple of years? Do you see any trends? You said we do not know what in the future will come up, but I still think that you have your gut feeling, your intuition, and you feel a little bit what will happen. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
I mean, risk factor, I would tell so I'll come to that part. First is follow the big guys. What are the big guys doing? The Warren Buffett, the Rockefellers, because I know some of them, also George Soros. Why is Rockefeller disinvesting from fossil fuel? They have been disinvesting the last 10 years or 8 years. They are completely, their whole money is built on fossil fuel. I think that should already start giving signal to the world. Where is the world heading for? So much massive rich people or institutions are disinvesting from certain sectors, who are getting out of certain sectors. Why is Saudi Arabia or UAE, everybody now focusing more and more on service sector, while their all money is coming from oil? Because there is something changing in the market. So when somebody comes and says, oh, invest in I'm going to drill for oil in Arctic or Antarctic, invest in me, it's very easy to say it, but follow the money. There's hardly any investment going there. It's drying out. The investments are seriously drying out. Now you mentioned the names, or you did not mention the names. Getting in and out of he did it once before, he got in, but it doesn't make much difference, because the wind energy or the renewable energy is anywhere now cheaper than oil, petroleum produced energy. The movements is going, and to be a member of Paris Agreement has got a couple of criteria. You have to pay a certain amount of money per year as a country. You have to fulfill certain regulations. You have to do reporting on your industry every year, which industry in your country produced how much CO2 and all that. Guess what? Even if he moves out, it's not impacting, because Bloomberg, today or yesterday, he mentioned he's going to pay the money, which the US government is going to pay, and the reporting continues. Because, which is very funny, because the Chinese, they have been competing with the West since last 30, 40 years. They started with the car industry, but they found out they can't, because the West has such an advantage in the car industry. They can't compete, they can't catch up. So they started 10 or 15 years ago in EVs. Today, they are reaping the benefits of it, because not only China itself is getting all clean and they are moving completely out of fossil fuel. There are cities in China where hardly any diesel or petrol car is available anymore. Not only the transition is going on, they are also becoming the biggest exporter of EVs worldwide. So if our friend whom you don't want to name continues in that way, soon the whole world will have non-petrol and diesel cars, except US. Even in US, you have islands. If you go to California or something, there is hardly any electric or diesel. So it's very easy to say things, but the movement is so big and so powerful, and it has already overtaken everything else. So I wouldn't pay too much attention to what he's saying. The movement will go on. Now, regarding the risk trend, so I have this family background. So since since 1992, I had this very bad habit of predicting things. Until today, I have never been wrong. So that's since then. But apparently, I heard from my family, it started from my grandfather. He did his PhD in electrical engineering in Glasgow and later in Oxford. And I think in 35 or 36, he was going around speaking in England, telling everybody, watch out, there's a big war coming because Hitler is really dangerous. He's going to do something. And all the Brits laughed him out, saying, oh, you Indian, you have no idea of European politics. Hitler is just a big blah, 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 big mouth. Nothing is going to happen. And I think my grandfather returned back to India, I don't know, 38 or 37, 38. And then we know what happened. So somehow I seem to have inherited a little bit of that. So I can see the trend movements and feel, and that's why also I was invited by a couple of US presidents and also the global think tanks to become member there, to see how if you make a certain decision or if you take a certain steps, what would be the consequence of that? And somebody also told me, maybe it's true or maybe not, I don't know, that since I also studied physics, that it teaches you to think in models. It teaches you to think in trends and models, and you can create one out of another. So I would say trend at this moment, get out of things where people are getting out of. Keep an eye on what the big guys are doing. They're not doing it for nothing. So they are seeing something which we are not seeing. I'm not a believer of the short-term things like you have now the Trump, what's it called? Cryptocurrency and Melania. May sound fantastic. You may make million and you can lose 10 million. If you are in that kind of mindset, go ahead, do it. But if you really want to create a value for yourself and your kids and grandkids, then go into something which is lasting, which is making a positive impact, and which is working at making your neighborhood, your family, your country, or your surrounding a better place. Okay. Whether it is social investment, environmental investment, because that's the one which has future. And it really depends on what is your mentality. You want to make money today and die tomorrow with all your money and put it in the grave with you, or you want to make money which you want to give it to your kids and grandkids. It's
great. So interesting. We could discuss, or I could listen to you for hours and hours and hours. You have such a huge, a bewildering area, of knowledge and wisdom. That's so great. But I have 2-3 very important questions left. And one question is, when it comes to funding projects, let's say you have, especially also the younger generation, they're so creative. They have so many innovative ideas and they come up with some impact projects, let's say, and they seek funding. What would you advise to them? What criteria do they have to fulfill in order to get a sort of the funding secured, either through your association or through other investors? What would be your quick advice to them?
I think impact investment is not different than any other investment. So follow all the basic rules of any other investment. So what you have to do, business plan, financial plan, whatever. What are the two added things is the impact measurement. So you should have the process or the report or the idea how you are going to measure the impact, internal and external. And the second is your documentation on it, your model of going forward, your transparency. You have to be transparent, as clear as possible, because investors of 20 years ago were a bit more less punishing than investor today. The moment you say, oh, I'm producing water which is extremely impactful and it is clean, and the investor gives you money and tomorrow he finds out you didn't say the truth or you're not measuring your water, he can just as fast withdraw. So we really have to be very careful be careful with measurement and transparent. Be transparent about everything. These two, and the rest, just follow the standard investment. And what is, I find very common among impactful projects is they're often, which is also valid for other investment sector, scalable. You have to be scalable. You can't say, I want to make bread and 5 breads per day and only for my street, because then the investor will say, okay, what's the growth? And secondly, it should be innovative. So what makes your bread so special that people should buy your bread and not your neighbors? And preferably disruptive. But once again, then I contradict myself. Disruptive is also a very misused, overused word. So when I say disruptive, really pay attention that it's disruptive and not just claim, because everybody can claim anything. So as long as you're measurable and transparent, the rest is fine.
Oh, perfect. So then I come to the last question already, because we have to keep a little bit also sort of a time budget within the framework of these podcasts, is what's the vision, your vision for humanity, for the world, for the planet as a whole? You've been working with so many different people who really make a true impact, and you make a true impact. You're doing so many good things along with your wife, But is there a vision, a higher purpose in front of you, which drives you, which makes you move every day? Can you tell something about that?
So I think since I was a kid, nature has always been my... I mean, I just tell everybody, so if you go to anybody and people say, close your eyes and meditate and think of a peaceful place, the first thing that comes in your head is forest or garden or nature. So in our head we have it, so why not create it also outside? What's stopping us? So nature is always very important, and the society. I have seen poverty. I grew up in India. There's so much poverty. And growth doesn't have to be like this, that I gather billions and I don't care about people dying around me. Growth can also be like this, that more and more people can do the basic things. First start with the basic amenities, and then you can always go to more. But at least get everybody food, everybody a warm house, clothing. And I think there's such a huge growth place there. So that's where the trend is. And I think I told it to you also before that there's two kind of worlds in the future. One is the Star Trek world, where everybody has food, education, every basic things are covered, and people can only focus on what they want to do. They want to study, they want to do art, music. And the other world is the Mad Max world, where everything is finished and people are killing each other just for water. And we are really at this threshold of choosing one of the two. And our job is to see to it, all of our job and your viewers and listeners, that we follow, that we stick to the one, what I say, the Star Trek world. Because you know, the wolf you will feed is the wolf that will win.
Exactly. I always call it, or summarize it, it's always love over fear, Either in every single second in our lives, you have always to take the decision, do we go for love or do we go for the fear,
Yeah.
What way do we follow? And I guess we have, unfortunately, a majority of the world which is largely fear-driven, to a certain extent, But I think more and more, also based on the sense of urgency we feel out there, people start to change, they start to realize, they also start to have more faith, take more risks, just to follow their hearts. And I think concerning this, I think we fully agree,
Exactly, because it is love. And it's funny, fear sells. It sells faster, it sells. But the end result, love always wins.
Exactly.
You have the tortoise and the rabbit thing. The rabbit goes always faster, but the tortoise wins.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Ben, thank you very much for taking your time. It was a real honor and privilege to be here, and so that you took your time. You're such a busy person. And we will continue our collaboration anyway in the near future. I'm really looking forward to that, and thanks very much.
No, same here. Thank you very much for coming over all the way.
Yeah.
So,
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining The Next Level of Your Greatness by Andreas Dudas, the Legacy Maker. If you're on a journey to create a legacy of impact, please subscribe so you can join this community with Andreas, who find the important and life-changing value of creating a purpose-driven legacy. For more information, go to andreasdudas.com. Remember, your legacy may just begin here.